Hello, 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 everybody. Welcome. So sorry for the tech issues. I feel like we're virtually standing at the door of like letting you into an actual meeting. We're sorry. We're sorry. What a what a mess. Everybody come in and take a seat, and please, if you can mute your mics, that would be great as you come in. Sorry about that. Usually we have people auto muted, but we just set this up on the fly, trying to get this all up and working. So sorry about that, guys. Again, we really do apologize for that. We'll give everybody just a minute here to kind of get in here while the system lets everybody in, and then we'll kick this thing off. We'll get it started. Hope you're all having a good night. Mine is waiting in our sorry butts for the last, 10 minutes? 20 minutes. 20 minutes. Wonderful. 20 minutes.
Yeah. Isn't tech great?
Yeah, it's great.
It's a love-hate relationship.
Yeah, YouTube. I don't even know what to say about that. YouTube can take a long walk off a short cliff. Let's see here. Okay, do we have... Let me make sure here. Are we... just trying to check and see if we're missing any, or if anybody's in the waiting. I don't want anybody stuck in the waiting room here.
Doesn't look like it. Looks like they're all here.
I don't know how to keep my name on here. Rip.
Yep, you'll go ahead and just let's see. You can rename yourself.
How? Tell me how.
In fact, I'm going through and doing it. Mark, would you mind doing that while I start kind of kicking this off? Just go through and rename everybody here that has a name.
Oh, yeah. Let me do that.
Sorry about that, guys. I'm just titling you participant if it's not a user avatar of some sort.
Yep, we'll do that for everybody. Absolutely.
All right, guys. So we're going to go and get started here. Again, so sorry for the tech issues. I might be on the computer all night tonight figuring this out, but we're going to make this work tomorrow. But we are happy to have you here, and welcome to this, well, should have been a YouTube live stream of joint operation between Dare to Connect, the PBSE Podcast, and then also Love After Porn. So I'm Steve Moore. For those of you we haven't had the pleasure of meeting, it's good to meet all of you. This is Mark Kastleman, and our co-host and co-founder. Mark and I, just by quick way of introduction, we'll just give you the quick breakdown between the two of us, what we do and why we do it. And then we'll jump right into the Q&A tonight, because we got a bunch of questions that, thankfully, the Google form that I put together did work just gret. So we've got a bunch of questions and we've got answers and things prepared too. So we will be addressing all of those here in just a second. I guess we'll talk a mix of just the resume along with the history. So I'm a licensed clinical social worker, also a certified sex addiction therapist, or CSAT, as some people refer to it as. I'm also a certified partner trauma therapist and a certified multiple addictions therapist. But probably what is most relevant to people here aren't any of those things. Probably the thing that is more relevant to at least many of you is that I am an addict in long-term successful recovery, as is Mark. So I show up as a therapist, but also as a participant with all of you. And I guess if I was to say this is a 12-step meeting, hi, I'm Steve. I'm a sexaholic. And by the grace of God, I've been sober since October 13th of 2014. So it's good to be with everybody this evening that way. Mark is also is a co-host. He is Mark, you want to introduce yourself? You'll do better than I will.
Yeah, my background's a little different. I've been specializing in treating pornography addiction and betrayal trauma and helping couples for a little over 20 years.
There was a question.
But I approached my training by becoming a board-certified pastoral counselor and clinical chaplain, specializing in trauma, in a lot of PTSD issues, and of course in a lot of addiction issues as well. I managed for about 7 years a drug and alcohol rehab facility. So just have spent the last almost 23, 24 years focused on addiction in my professional work. And as Steve said, the biggest part is I'm an addict in long-term successful recovery. Also someone who's suffered with a tremendous amount of physical and emotional abuse as a kid and a teenager, suffered from a lot of mental illness issues that I had to work through personally over the years. So really can relate to the clients that I've served all these years. I kind of say I am one of you. So just really good to be here with all of you. We love working with partners. We appreciate all of you. We know you go through unbelievable, horrific amounts of stuff that you didn't you didn't cause, you didn't ask for, you didn't anticipate. In many ways, you can't fix. And so it's just always awesome to work with partners and to try to do what we can to help you. So it's just good to be here.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, and again, we will have the tech issues worked out, and we will either start on YouTube bright and early at 10 a.m. Mountain Time tomorrow, as promised, or God is my witness, we will get you a Zoom link right away, and we'll get you in here. But either way, we will have this tomorrow as well. So
For sure.
we're really thrilled to be here. Mark and I do lots of different presentations with lots of different groups. We've both been doing this for a really long time. I know I say this every time I meet with partners, and I know Mark, I speak for Mark too when I say this. We both feel very similar, but this is by far, hands down, when I'm talking to a group of partners, these meetings are by far the most intimidating for me. I can stare down a group of stone cold addicts, drug, alcohol, sex, doesn't really matter. And have many times. I used to run an intensive outpatient for chemical addiction. Mark and I have a lot of background in a lot of different areas, but I used to work in the special victims unit at the DA's office once upon a time. But, you know, I don't even know other, and I don't mean this in a religious connotation, but it really feels like sacred ground when we're meeting with all of you, for lack of a better term. I mean, we're kind of here in the presence of a bunch of survivors who've been through tremendous amounts of pain and difficulty. And we recognize that some of you may be addicts attending as well. So we're grateful for you to be here as well. And we very much empathize and connect with you from that personal perspective too. But we just appreciate you partners taking the time and the energy from a couple of addicts who very much were your partners in many respects at one point to where we are now. Wherever you are in the process and wherever you end up in the process, at least to this point in time, thank you for hanging in here and giving healing a chance, whatever that means.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
You could have just immediately scrapped this. You could have walked the minute this came up. And in some cases that is appropriate. Sometimes that is needed. But for those who are here and are giving this a chance, we really, really appreciate you. And we know that the pain is real. Tonight is all about you and trying to answer your questions from a unique perspective, which is what we front on the PBSE podcast. Mark and I have been hosting that now for nearly 3 years. 4 years.
4 years.
4 years. Yeah, which is wild. Well, five.
It'll be 5 in January.
It'll be 5 years. Yeah, over 5 years. That's right, because we're on episode 240 something. So but both of us have been in recovery a long time, but not nearly long enough to have forgotten the hell of living as an addict and the hell that we put our partners through, and we can connect really well with all of that. So we'll be answering questions tonight, both from kind of that clinical side, but also probably even of more value too, of hopefully we can bring you a perspective that is unique from two guys in long-term recovery, what some of these concepts look like in real time in a successful navigating style, right? When the rubber meets the road, how does this actually play out in real time outside of a therapist's office, outside of a podcast? Like, how does this actually look? So that's kind of our goal.
Yeah.
We'll be keeping an eye on the chat. And so feel free to post questions up in there. We can't guarantee we're going to get to those. We got about 27 questions to answer over the next couple of days. We probably won't get to all of those either, but we're going to tackle as many of them as we can. And we'll try to, if you guys have side questions, we'll do our very best to get to those as well. So please feel free to be active in the chat. We'd love to hear from all of you.
Yeah.
So with that in mind, let's just kind of take a look at these.
Yeah, we'll just kind of tackle these in the order they came in.
Yeah.
The first one we saw that came in is something that we see a lot. It's a crazy hard situation for partners. This partner says she's been in a relationship with a porn addict for 10 years. He kept his usage expertly hidden. And she was in that relationship for 10 years and he kept it expertly hidden. So she decided that in any future relationship, she would have a hard no porn boundary, right? She didn't care if it was an addiction or not. If any guy that she would be involved with in the future had any of those issues, she was out. And so she actually got into a relationship and she thought that this guy didn't have any of these issues. And lo and behold, she finds out that he does. And she says she's been extremely vulnerable with her current partner about her views. and past trauma with porn. And she says he seems sincere and understanding, but I don't know from experience how easy it, I know from experience how easy it is for men to lie and use our vulnerabilities against us. So then she asked the really important question, how can I trust him or any man being honest about this? And it's a very raw and real question, right? Because part of this, the legitimate survival part of you says, how can I ever be assured that who I'm with currently is telling me the truth about this? What happens if I'm blindsided again? What happens if he's expertly good at hiding it like my last relationship? How under those circumstances could I ever risk going forward in a relationship? Right? Where are my guarantees? Where are my assurances? It's a very good question.
You know, it sounds eerily similar. My wife and I am 42, and we are pregnant with our first. Some would say that is a foray into folly. Maybe that's a suicide mission. I don't know, but we're really excited. She's 7 months along, and we were having a conversation the other day, and she said, you know, Steve, she was kind of having one of those freak out moments I think as new parents tend to do, and she has the hormones going too, which I'm sure makes it even harder. And she was actually really emotional the other day. And she just said, Steve, like, what are we gonna do? Like, what if I hate the baby? Like, what if I hate being a parent? Which is a valid concern. We've been married nearly 20 years. And now here we are jumping into parenting. This is like, we're living Father of the Bride Part 2. But without the bride part. It's really weird. And I'll tell you how I addressed it. This may sound weird to some. Maybe some of you would appreciate this, but I said, hon, I hope you don't take this the wrong ways. I said, but I'm planning on hating it. And she said, what do you, like, what do you mean? And I said, I don't know if this is a good way to do it, but I'm planning on hating this at times. Like, I'm going into this knowing I am going to want to murder that child. I guarantee it. I guarantee I'm going to have days where I'm going to like call my mom and be like, you're going to hear about us on the news if you do not take this baby. Like, you're gonna. Like, I know that's going to happen. I am fully planning on embracing that. But I also know there will be great times. And my thinking is that overwhelmingly, what I've been told by people is that it is hell, but it is worth it. And I know it's a very different situation between that versus signing up in a relationship. But I think that there is, and most of us were not raised with this, and I understand that. So this is a hard concept for like our D2C subscribers or PBSE people to really grasp. But this question comes up a lot. That's what they're asking. That's what all of you are asking, right? How can I guarantee Mark and Steve he's not going to hurt me again? 2-word answer. You can't.
You can't. Yeah.
You can't. There are no guarantees in relationships. The action of intimacy operates under a couple of rules of emotional physics. Look at it like the emotional equivalent of gravity. The more I invest in a relationship, to whatever degree I invest is the degree by definition that another person can hurt me. In any relationship, marriage, business partnership, friends, family, whatever the case may be, right? Relationships are always a risk because engaging with another person means whatever else you do in that relationship, you have to honor their God-given right or a higher power-given right to agency, which in layman's term or Steve's more popular language means they're just going to do whatever the hell they're going to do. Right. And I have to, if I'm going to really expect authenticity from another person, and I'm going to be authentic with that person, the degree to which I am authentic with them is the degree that I let go of controlling them. They may accept what I'm saying or doing. They may reject what I'm saying or doing. They may choose to invest in the relationship the way that I am. They may choose not to. And so safety, therefore, in relationships never could have been found from the place of guarantees of not being hurt. Most of us pre-betrayal, right, very much found safety there, but we found it from what I term a place of healthy naivete. Most of us do not sign up into marriages or relationships and say, gosh, I can't wait till this guy screws me over, or I got to be ready for that, right? We sign up in relationships with a pure outlook. We sign up with, the world is our oyster and we can do anything. I remember my wife and I, we told each other and we look back and laugh on it. I remember thinking when we first got married, we totally got this. All the other idiots out there who get divorced, those people are morons. Like, they don't know what they're doing. Those guys are idiots. Like, we know how to have a relationship. We've got this, right? And of course, life hit and things happened and it became way more complicated than that. But betrayal teaches us in a hard way sometimes that lesson that we didn't pick up before. Is that and it teaches us a couple of lessons, but one of them is that sometimes somebody really close to me can absolutely pull the wool over my eyes to one degree or another and absolutely can blindside me with hard things.
Yeah.
Right.
Well, and so someone would ask, so the safest thing to do is never go into another relationship ever again because you can't give me guarantees.
Yeah.
I would really point out a couple of things that I hope will empower. And Steve and I, we talk about our Dare to Connect culture of empowerment. We're all about helping all of you to step into your power as much as possible. And I see well, I know that this is hard. How can I ever know he's telling the truth? And we say you can't. But there are a couple of places of really solid empowerment for each of you. One is all of you have been through crazy hard stuff and still going through it, many of you. And I would submit that you really embrace that and say, I am not the same person today that I was a month or a year or a decade ago. I'm wiser. I have better intuition. I trust my intuition. I have support systems. I have tools. If in fact I find out that, let's say the new relationship I'm in now, I find out down the road that he has not been honest, I will then put in place all the things that I have on my side of the street. And I am confident that I will be able to do so. Right? So that's each of you are more capable and more experienced and more wise and more resilient than you give yourselves credit for. So if you find that happens, you'll be able to manage it and move forward. I'm confident in that.
Yeah.
The other part of the empowerment comes in what we talk about all the time is boundaries.
Sure.
Right? The way you stay safe is through boundaries. In fact, I'm going to bring up a little graphic real quick. We spent about 2 months on boundaries recently in Dare to Connect.
You guys want to deep dive on topics? Dare to Connect is the place to do it.
People are they getting sick of boundaries? That's all we talk about. So I'm going to bring up a little simple graphic that we did during our boundaries discussion at Dare to Connect so you can start to get an idea of this, because this is where real safety is created, is in this boundaries area. So you'll notice it says the process of setting and holding boundaries. And you'll notice a couple of things here on this little chart. What is your specific want and or need? That's always where boundaries begin, is with your authentic want and or need. Because what is a boundary designed to do this is where the culture gets, it's unfortunate in our culture that boundaries are misunderstood and miscommunicated often. Well, I thought from my growing up history that people put boundaries on me or I put it on them to control them or for me to be controlled. What we've come to realize with healthy boundaries is the only reason I set a boundary is to take an authentic want or need that I have and construct a fence of safety around that want or need. That's all a boundary can be designed to do. It cannot be designed to control another person's behaviors or what they do or don't do. So I establish my authentic want or need, I build a boundary around it, and then I put in place an outcome or a result that you see here of a violated or respected boundary. So if my boundary is respected, here's the outcome. If it isn't, here's the outcome. So outcome, you'll notice it doesn't say consequences here because we know consequences has also been another misused word. So we simply have outcomes or results if our boundaries are violated or kept. So it's not to control or punish another person, but it's to keep me safe. So this question that came in, we would encourage her to have really well-constructed and well-communicated boundaries about what her wants and needs are in any relationship that she would engage in going forward. In this one, hey, here's what I want to need from you. If you decide to ever violate this, here will be the outcome or the result. It's clearly communicated. And then you trust in that boundary. And if it's violated, you'll have the competence and the courage and the resilience and the support system to carry out the outcome that's necessary. that's where your confidence comes from, not whether he will tell the truth or not.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
Now, over time, obviously, when intimacy returns and trust is reestablished, and that's a whole journey in and of itself, right?
Is.
But over time, as that happens, right, we can begin to look progressively to our partners to be able to help to create that safety. But that's just it. That's the emphasis, right, is on the help. It's always with that understanding that at the end of the day, who is responsible for my happiness and welfare? Me. My partner is just that, right? They're my partner. They are my person in many respects, but they cannot and never will be me, right? Being in a relationship in a healthy way means that I don't surrender my autonomy. I move progressively towards a state of what we call interdependence, but we want to be avoiding any stages of toxic or unhealthy codependence. And a great way to, I mean, codependence is a whole topic, right? And we may talk about that over these couple of days. But one great litmus test to know that you are probably heading there, if you're not there already, is when you find yourself looking to another person as one clinician that we quote oftentimes says it, we're looking to another person to supply for us the things that we need to be cultivating internally. Right?
Yeah.
Nobody can, quote unquote, make me safe in a relationship. The things that they do or don't do will contribute to that. But at the end of the day, my tools, my boundaries, those are the things that have to be relied on to create that. And it's unfortunate that so many of us enter into relationships not knowing those rules. Our society does a really bad job teaching these things.
Yeah.
So
now that doesn't mean we don't have expectations. We don't have,
of course not,
all the things we expect of the other person, but that's where our boundaries come in, where our wants and needs are clearly stated. The boundaries are clearly set up and established, and the outcomes or results are also clearly held. And that's where the only real safety comes in. There was a second question that came in that kind of well, there's two more that kind of play into the same area.
Yes.
One partner writes in and says, how do I know when I'm done? She says basically what she has, boy, I could relate to this. It appears that she has a partner, an addict in recovery, that she's in a relationship with. And his recovery is very reactive to how much heat she puts on him. Because what she says is he does great when we kind of have a bit of a crisis and I hold my boundaries. He'll do great for a number of months, but it slowly kind of tails off and he gets into complacency. And then we need another crisis in order for him to get serious again. And so here's this roller coaster ride, right? Of when he works recovery and when he doesn't. And she's really getting fatigued and exhausted by this. She says, I don't want a divorce. We have 2 young kids, but she says, how do I know when we're done? How do I know when I have to cut the ties? And then I loved her heartfelt question. Do I deserve better? Right. And that's where you're just like, you just feel it right in your heart. And you want to just reach out and hug her and say, absolutely, you deserve better. Mm-hmm. But how does a partner know when they're done? How do they know when it's over? It's a good question.
Well, and it's a complicated one. And I guess we can only probably answer this by just starting you off with the basics. This is definitely something we do deep dive into in Dare to Connect all the time. But the question operates in orbits, or the answer rather orbits around this idea of what we call the authentic self, right?
Yes.
Who I am, what makes me up, who am I today as a person in all the areas, who am I trying to become, right, in all the areas. That is essentially what the authentic self is in a nutshell. And one of the tenets of the Dare to Connect program is we are constantly preaching and talking about this concept of mindfulness, which, among other things, means this journey of self-exploration, right? Who am I today? How am I different from yesterday? How much of how I'm investing and spending my time today resonates with how my brain is wanting to live, right? Questions like that. And so when you're talking about this idea of when do I go, when do I stay, there are a couple of pretty complicated factors in that, right? Because obviously, and those would include a couple of things. How long have you all been together? Are kids involved or not? Right? Financially, what does that situation look like? What are the options outside of living together from a financial and emotional perspective? What resources are available to everybody? But then it goes even deeper than that, right? Because it goes to how much is he really investing? How much am I really investing? How much of a shot have we really given this relationship in terms of a chance and an opportunity to heal versus not? Where is his level of effort at? And is that compatible? That's the real kind of buzzword here. You know, the Pee Wee Herman's word of the day is compatibility, right? It's not a question of the right or the wrong in most cases. It's much more about how much have I been through? How much more is this situation asking of me? And how much can I give realistically without compromising that authentic person? Right. And of course it obviously is, and then how does that matching up with the efforts that they're putting in versus not?
Yeah, we often talk about this concept of the division of labor.
Yes.
What does the division of labor look like? What is he doing on his side for recovery? What is he doing to make amends and help repair the relationship? What are my responsibilities and accountability on the healing side with regard to my betrayal trauma? And are we both coming to the table with an accurate and balanced division of labor? And if we're not, if, for example, his side is severely lacking in that area, now it's time for us to come together to have a very vulnerable and authentic conversation about what that looks like, right? And start to establish what the expectations are on both sides of the table.
For sure.
Yeah, but Steve, you're right. At the end of the day, it does come down to a question of compatibility. Because if one partner is putting in far more than the other one is coming to the table with, that's where this imbalance becomes over time exhausting, fatiguing, and quite frankly, intolerable.
Yeah.
Right?
We talk oftentimes on Dare to Connect how one of the biggest determining, we call them resiliency factors in coupleships, right? Between success versus failing in the recovery process as far as the coupleship goes, is this, I guess it's hard to kind of come up with the term or a term for it, but it's more or less this. It's the level of openness and willingness, right, on the part of both people, right? What is the stretchiness factor, the rubber band factor, right? What is their capacity to be able to, what do the resources at hand look like? How much can we authentically expend, right? And where are we really willing to go with it? And something else that should be included with that too is, where is he finding motivation in the process? Because, I'm sorry, I got off track of my own thought. Probably one of those biggest factors that we see with couples versus the ones that make it versus the ones that don't, it's not so much the starting point of the coupleship, right? It's much more to do with what is the trajectory. So, for example, we see couples that are really, really struggling in a lot of ways, but because one or both of them is highly motivated and willing to work on it, even though it started at a quote unquote really bad place, they're able to successfully navigate and find a lot of healing fairly quickly. Whereas we will work with other coupleships where maybe there's quote unquote less going on, right? But one or both of them have said, for a variety of reasons, we're investing less, or we're not going to invest at all, or whatever the case may be. And when you stop moving in a forward momentum fashion, what we have seen is that's where the hopelessness really sets in for most people. That's where things get really scary. And that is where the relationship really stalls. And now we're looking at serious incompatibility.
Yeah. Well, and that kind of leads into another very short question that came in. What does or should early treatment look like for both the addict and their partner? Right. And this is where we get down to really super basics. As we start to look at early treatment, early recovery, early healing, I would say one of the very most important things that I would encourage everyone, if you're not doing this, to look at is it's very natural for us as a coupleship to rely on each other as our primary support systems. And that's why it's so painful, especially for a partner, when he's not showing up, leaning in, leading out, taking recovery seriously. And if that is your support system, is, for example, your addict in recovery, and he's dropping the ball on that, your world falls apart really quickly. So one of the most important parts of early treatment is to both establish your outside support systems that do not depend on your partner or your spouse, right? You've got to start to construct that. So, for example, getting involved in some sort of a 12-step support group. There's lots of them out there, and establishing that as quickly as possible, and then actively participating, trying to find a sponsor in that group. If you can find the right person who's a friend or a family member, where you can bring into that outside support system. You don't even have to talk to that person about the details of the betrayal or the addiction. It can just be someone that you're asking if they could be there to share, to provide emotional support when you're having a tough day. We start to look at things on our side of the street where I'm establishing my own self-care routine, journaling, meditation, taking care of my body, where I'm looking to be healthy and to feel good, right? You can see that support system that you have as individual partners is critical as early as possible in your process. That's where I would start.
Yeah. No, I would echo the same thing. The support system is huge. Some sort of individual mindfulness, right? Journaling is a great way to begin that, right? Figuring out and starting to link when what am I feeling? Why am I feeling it? When I feel triggered, what do those triggers look like, and what emotional responses do they bring up, right? Why are they eliciting those things from me? Those are all really good starting points. But I honestly, the only thing I would add to that is just echo what Mark said about the support system. Please do not make the mistake that I think 95% of couples do with this, which is to rely on your partner as your support in this process. It makes sense why we all do it, because if you were dealing with any other issue, who would you turn to? Well, your person, right? Of course you would. That makes total sense. But the problem is your person, quote unquote, is the person that caused the wounding. Right. And so there's a part of the intellectual part of saying, well, this is the person I turn to with support, even as your limbic system is telling you he's not trustworthy. Right. Yeah. And so you're trying to take actions or derive support from someone who no longer possesses the emotional trust. Mark calls it a trust account, emotional clout, whatever you want to call it. Yeah. Right. To be able to really resonate with you on that level.
Well,
so
the
only thing
I would add to that in early recovery, I would become educated and start to become really familiar with and start to implement basic boundary work. I would say that's an essential. What are boundaries for? What do they look like? How do I establish results or outcomes for those boundaries? And how do I make those boundaries all about my side of this equation? My wants and needs, and building up a fence or boundaries around those wants and needs to keep them safe. That's also essential early work. Yeah.
That's a great addition. No, absolutely. Absolutely. Well, let's keep rolling here. I'm keeping an eye on the let's see here on the chat. Gosh, so many of you are quiet. CCB's talking a lot, but the rest of you must just be stunned into silence in awe.
Well, here's one, and this my heart goes out to partners that ask this, and it's asked all the time. Why do some addicts choose not to recover? What does porn offer that a real person cannot? And
Great question.
You can hear the meaning behind that. And I don't know if the person that sent this question is in a relationship right now with someone who's not putting forth the effort and is not taking it serious. It's horribly painful, because you're thinking, why don't they care enough about me to work on this? What is it that their addiction is offering that I can't provide? Right? And you can hear the deep meaning in that. Let me answer that. As I reflect back on, more than a couple of decades working in the addiction field, I have run into a number of individuals over the years who just can't muster the courage, the openness, the humility, they just seem to not be able to rise to the occasion to get into serious, solid recovery. And the reasons for that are myriad. But let me just point out a few. And I'll use myself as an example. I started using my addiction outlets when I was about 13 years old. And those outlets became the way that I coped with anything in my life that was uncomfortable, difficult, stressful, anything that I didn't want to deal with, people I didn't want to deal with. Any time life became the least bit hard, I learned to turn to my addiction outlets. And what happened because of that is that I missed some major opportunities to mature and to become resilient as an adult, as I moved into adulthood. And so when it came time for me to make a decision about whether to get into recovery and to leave my addiction behind, I struggled for years about whether a part of me really wanted to do that or not. Why? Because it was my go-to place to cope with life. It was my pair of crutches to be able to walk. And somebody was asking me to confront whether I was willing to let all that go or not. And there was a part of me that just freaked out and said, no way, I can't live life without that. Now we see this a lot in the rehab facilities that I've helped run, and all the drug and alcohol dependence people I've worked with. There are too many of them that say, if you're asking me to give up the thing that allows me to live life and cope, I'm not going to do it. So they keep drinking. They keep using their heroin or their cocaine. The same sort of thing happens with porn and sex addicts, because porn and sex are their drug of choice. And so why do some choose not to recover? Because some part of them just says it's too hard. I can't face life without this. And because often their maturation process stopped or didn't even begin because they started using at a very early age, they don't have the maturity to rely upon to even make sound decisions at this point in time. So those are just a few of the reasons why someone might not choose to recover.
Yeah.
And when it's asked, why does porn offer something that a real person can't? Why does alcohol offer something that a real person can't compete with? Why does cocaine or heroin or meth offer something that a partner can't compete with? Many of those reasons are the same reason why you can't compete with his sex or porn addiction, because it's not about sex or porn. It's a dependence on a substance. It's a dependence on we call them process addictions. It's a dependence on a process.
Well, and I think I can add something to that too, because this is something I've thought about many times, talked to clients about. I think one thing that plays a role into this as well, specifically with sex addiction. Mark and I, as he indicated, have worked with lots of different kinds of addictions. But if we look at sexual addiction as an attachment disorder, which it definitely is, and we look at it through that model for a second, speaking through my lens, what pornography offered on a core level, right? Outside of the unrealistic, airbrushed nonsense of it all, what it offered me was the emotional equivalent of dessert without vegetables.
Mm.
So what I mean by that is it offered or billed itself as a way to experience the physical pieces, and in some cases, even the emotional components of a highly connected, intimate relationship without the emotional investment, without the emotional risk of rejection, which for an addict is tremendous because of our self-worth and value issues. And without the work, being frank with you, that's what it was. That was the allure, right? I don't have to deal with all of this vulnerability, openness, scary stuff. I can skip straight to the pinnacle of connection. And I can do it free or a rejection risk free.
Mm-hmm.
People on the computer screen aren't going to refuse me. The woman on the computer screen is willing to do anything for me. My fantasy doesn't become disrupted with pesky things like feelings and emotions in reality. Right? I mean, I chuckle about it now, but I chuckle because that's very much how my brain worked. And I think a lot of guys and girls, because women are the fastest growing demographic with pornography right now. That is the allure, I think.
Well, and you can hear in what Steve's expressing the immaturity of it all.
Absolutely.
The lack of
nonsense.
The lack of, growing and evolving. You can hear it. Yeah, for sure.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Okay. Well, we've got let's see, we've got another one here. I'm actually going to, I know this is shocking, but we're going to make this semi-professional, everybody. So buckle your seatbelts because it's going to blow your mind. Okay. We're actually going to do a screen share with questions. So as the porn addict and sex addict, so this comes from an addict partner, which we appreciate writing in. How do I rebuild trust with my partner that I have betrayed? We are in a long distance relationship, so they don't have eyes on me all the time to know what I am or am not doing. They also go to bed at least 1 hour before I do, so there's always doubt about what I do while they are asleep. I have been sober since my discovery day. So there's a whole list of things that I would do about this. If we had time, I'd do a bullet point for you. But the first one is going to be something that maybe your typical person would not throw on the list. But having worked with many, many, many partners over the years, Mark and I think we'd probably unite as one voice in saying this. Be accountable and be actively engaged in the amends process for the betrayal that has already been perpetuated, first of all. I wish somebody had come along and told me that sooner. Because as an addict, and I think it was just my natural human nature, I didn't want to deal with all that pesky past stuff. I just wanted to focus on, okay, yeah, I've been a dick in the past, right? I've been a total asshat, but how do I be awesome now, right? And I just wanted to focus on today and the clean slate, and so often my partner would be saying in one form or fashion, sometimes without even realizing, but there's a whole mess of crap back there. We're just sweeping that under the rug. Is that what you're saying? We're just what about, right? And so their ability to even move forward in many ways is compromised even more than partners realize. And so I would say that on the list of things that should now it doesn't mean amends have to be completed, nor does that mean that accountability has to be completely finished. Obviously everyone's at a different space in the process, but that should be an active ongoing process of ownership. That is happening in order for that to.
Well, so for example, has there been a formal disclosure under the direction of a professional? Right. Not just trickle disclosure. Has there been an impact letter that this partner has been able to respond to that disclosure with, where she talks about the harm and betrayal that's been done and how it's impacted her? And has he come up with an amends plan, an action plan, a going forward plan? Have they talked about, and has he offered how to try to restore at least some part of what has been lost, what was stolen, right? There's past amends, and there's what we call living active amends. And one of the biggest things I really want to point out to this guy is, how much are you leading out?
Yep.
Are you waiting for her to ask for what she needs? Are you waiting for her to get upset and then you respond? Or are you being very proactive in leading out? Sharing with her what you're doing in recovery, sharing with her when you have struggles and what you're doing to manage those. If you're succeeding in staying sober, how are you doing that? Why is that working? Right? Coming back and letting her know. I can't emphasize enough this leading out, leaning in, being proactive, not waiting for her, intuiting difficult things that could come and bringing those up first rather than waiting for her to bring them up, right? That whole side of proactive leading out is critical.
Yeah. No, I would completely front to everything that Mark is saying. Now, the last part that I'd probably add to this, some of you may have done if you find yourself in this situation, but I am always amazed how many of the guys that we work with haven't done this. Okay. And it makes sense why, because of fear, because we're bad communicators, or we struggle to practice intimacy. But ask her. I know that sounds really simplistic, but it's so interesting how oftentimes we will skip that step. right? We find ourselves as the addict, as the bad guy, quote unquote, beating our head against this wall of what do I do? How do I, you know, when sometimes the most simple solution is to be able to say, partner, I am so sorry that you've been in this place. I feel scared and sad that I've destroyed trust. I want to start rebuilding that, but I'm not quite sure how. These are three things that those guys in that crazy Dare to Connect program that we're in are suggesting, and I'm going to be doing those. What do you think about those? Do those resonate for you? Do you feel like there are other things that you need first? Is there another way that I could better speak to where your trust is struggling the most today? Right? Sometimes just having that conversation, which again, I know Mark and I can very much relate. Sometimes it feels like a suicide mission all on its own to say something like that. But
Yeah.
but I think just putting your partner in the driver's seat can be huge in that situation.
Yeah. What do you need? What is your greatest need today? Right. And then I would say, some would say, well, you don't have to say the next part, Mark, but I'm going to. If you're going to ask and they're going to express the need, you better follow through.
Yep.
Or it's a massive trust account withdrawal.
And you better be ready for the hard answers, meaning that you better be having the skills and the tool sets to be in place to be able to not get defensive.
Yeah.
Because if you're asking for that vulnerability and those defenses go up, if you ask your partner for their feelings and then you immediately do what Steve used to do, which is jump into all the ways in which now they're wrong for having those feelings. Been there, done that. You've just set yourself back even further, right? So,
Yep.
It's a great starting point.
There's
Okay.
there's one in the chat thread here. My addict partner and I just set boundaries together. One of them includes real recovery and finding a CSAT, doing a 12-step program, getting a sponsor, etc. What are the realistic timeframes for these to be accomplished? Should there even be a time frame? First of all, I believe there should be a time frame, because one of the things that addicts absolutely cannot operate within is a system that has no boundaries, no expectations, no timelines, no deadlines. That's disaster for an addict. So I'm hoping that this addict partner, he is actually volunteering and proactively putting on the table that there does need to be timeframes, or he knows from his past history and behaviors it's probably not going to happen. So I'm hoping that he will lead out in establishing timeframes. But you as a partner, you have a right to say what time frame is reasonable for you. You can't be expected to just sit in the dark and hope that one day he'll follow through with these things. Not only should you start establishing what are authentic timeframes for you, there should be, if not daily check-ins happening, there should be at least a weekly partnership meeting where these things are discussed. And he comes to the table in that weekly partnership meeting and says, let me come back and report to you about where I am in the progress of these things happening. That should be reported on weekly at a minimum. Yeah. Right. So yes, timeframes, return and report, right? Him coming back to be accountable and responsible for what this all looks like. So absolutely that should be happening.
Yeah, for sure. There is, we did a segment once in Dare to Connect. We spent the better part of like 45 minutes with the addicts in the addict session one day talking about the importance of taking out the garbage. I remember that session vividly, and it was a great discussion that centered on this idea. And it's founded on this idea that, we as addicts, again, sometimes we beat our heads against the wall, and sometimes partners do too, about how am I ever going to build that trust again? And it's true that consistency in this area can be particularly difficult to build up, especially given the circumstances that are being described right there. However, are there other ways that you can be consistent in ways that she can verify?
Yeah, I like that.
Right?
In ways she can verify.
And one of the examples we gave in that group was, are you making commitments like taking out the garbage? If you are, taking out the garbage just became the most important thing you will do that day.
Absolutely.
Because it's so much more than the garbage, right? This is about you retraining yourself and helping to build trust for your partner and sending the message that one of the changes I'm making here is not just a commitment to sobriety. It's a commitment to changing all these other character defects that both led to as well as resulted from the addiction.
Yeah.
Right. And one of those is my consistency and my follow through. Right. My word is my bond. I say that I'm going to take out the garbage. Unless God himself shows up and tells me not to, I'm going to do it. And even then I'll probably question it. Right. Like it's going to happen. And that's the end of the discussion, right? When we start to develop at that level of commitment, that is one way to do that. Last thing I would say on that question, though, too, is also speak to the insight. We emphasize this a lot in Dare to Connect. I think Mark touched on it a little bit. It's one thing to be able to tell your partner, hey, I attended my meeting today. Can that create some safety? Sure. But I've attended many meetings where guys are really listening and taking notes, and guys 2 seats down are playing Angry Birds on their phone, right? Attending your meeting is one thing, but when your partner says, hey, how did your meeting go? What if you really paid attention and you spent 5 minutes saying, you know what, it was a great meeting. This is what came up. And as somebody was talking about this anonymously, it really resonated with how I had treated you in these ways. And it brought these emotions for me.
Right. Yep.
I will tell you, that is something, speaking as a former master bullshitter, insight is something very difficult to bullshit. It is a great way to be able to demonstrate sincerity in the process. And obviously it has the side benefit of you actually growing. So.
Well, and there's another important aspect of reestablishing trust. I'll have guys, or I'll have partners say to me, so, and this question came up earlier, how will I ever know what's going on in his head? You won't, unless he develops honesty at all costs as his policy and shares it with you. But you're never going to have a guarantee that you know what's going on inside his head. And guys will say, well, she's never going to trust me again because she doesn't believe that what I say I'm thinking is what I'm thinking. So where's the hope? I'll tell you where the hope is for both of those partners. It starts with the little deposits of the trust account, like the taking out the garbage because I said I would, like calling us together as a coupleship to have a daily check-in come hell or high water, like having our weekly partnership meeting that I lead out on. Right? Those little deposits in things that I can control is where we start to reestablish trust. And when a partner sees those little consistencies, she can start to dare to believe that maybe there's some hope here. Maybe he is trustworthy, not entirely because I can't go there yet, but I can see that he's trustworthy in this little area and that little area and that one.
Yeah.
I think I can build on that. That at least gives me some hope that we can build something. So those little consistencies are crucial.
Yeah, very well said.
Yeah,
That's a great question. Let's see here. Okay, we've got a bunch of other things in here. Let's see. What will we look here? Let's tell you what. Let's take another one from what was already pre-submitted here. So let me share my screen again, because again we've got these all nifty formatted. Ooh, somebody's unmuting. We're muting you right now, and we're stopping your video as well, and we're going to rename you all in one go.
there we go.
Participant. There we go. Perfect. Okay, look how quick we did that. All right, so sharing my screen again, everybody. All right, my partner has been in addiction therapy for 8 months. He is also in a support group and listens to podcasts. I can see he's passionate about his recovery, but when I open up and want to share my feelings and pain, he goes into shame. Somehow the conversation always changes to something I have done that hurt him. When he treats me badly and I bring it up, my reaction to the pain is what is treated as the offense, not the initial offense. I'm at a loss for what I should do. It seems to be a big pattern for us, no matter how delicately I bring up my feelings. I have probably 3 clients in my individual clinic right now that could have written this.
I could have written this in my past experience.
This is an extremely common and probably one of the more frustrating issues that partners run across.
Yes.
Right? We have this dynamic where you are trying to express your feelings, whether it's pain or frustration or whatever, or even ask things, right? And it seems as though you were dealing with, I used the phrase the other day in working with a coupleship that I work with pretty well, like an emotional porcelain doll. It's as though like a gentle breeze is going to come along and just shatter him, right? And I think we should probably talk a little bit about the problem before we get into the solution, Mark, if that's okay.
Absolutely.
Addicts, and there's a lot of clinical research to back this up, by the way, so we won't get into it for sake of time, but it is pretty fascinating when you look at it. Addicts in many ways are an enigma. And one of the ways that they are is because of the ways in which maturation for some addicts, depending on age, when addiction sets in and the nature of it and what needs they were using to meet with the addiction, we enter what we would call kind of a Peter Pan mode, which is that we cease once we are introduced to the addiction and the brain makes the link of, oh, I can avoid this or abscond this or numb out this or compensate for this obstacle or this whatever, right? And I don't need to deal with those problems anymore or navigate through them in other ways. I've just got this escape. What happens for those guys is they cease in certain areas to either really slow down or cease to entirely to develop and mature in those ways. We work with partners all the time, and I know everyone on this chat or every partner is going to resonate with this. This guy I'm married to is a mystery. He owns a business. He's successful, right? He has friends. He can build stuff. He's in some ways he's so good with the kids. But then one of the kids will mention something or look at him wrong, and he goes berserk. He and I will be connecting. We'll be having a really loving time. I see something out of jest, and he completely shuts down and says he wants a divorce. Right? These sorts of instances are incredibly frustrating for partners because it's just baffling. How has this happened? And what we're talking about is the reason, right? When it comes to certain subjects. So, for example, I'll give you one that most addicts struggle with: conflict avoidance, right?
Oh my gosh, yes.
The normal track for resolving conflict is to what? You have to learn how to figure it out. When you first get when you first get bullied on the playground or get in a fight with your buddy in 5th grade or whatever the case is, you start to learn the basics about how to resolve conflict. But when I discover things like an addiction, or when I discover concepts like emotional manipulation, or I discover other things, all of a sudden I find myself able to no longer have to vulnerably deal with those issues. I can just skirt them.
Yep.
Right. And you would be shocked how many of the guys that we work with, because we are masters at using our addiction to mask, to compensate, to cope for, to medicate. How many guys, again, will be fully mature when it comes to certain areas, but then in other ways, wives will say, it's like I'm dealing with a 5-year-old. Clinically, you are. Like, you really are.
In those particular areas.
In those areas. Yeah. He is literally responding the way a 5-year-old when the 5-year-old yells, like, you're a stupid head. Because that's what he's learned. He hasn't learned how to live life on life's terms in that area.
And one of the big, huge ones is, if my partner starts sharing with me how I have caused her pain, what is my automatic defensive reaction going to be? Right? Yeah. Something's wrong with me. I'm not measuring up. I'm not worthy. Even the part that I'm hurting her, right, causes me to feel very uncomfortable. And because I haven't done my own shame resilience work, we call it, because I haven't learned yet to lean in and sit with her in her pain, how to come to her aid because she's in a crisis, even if I'm the cause of that crisis. I haven't learned any of those skills because I avoided them for decades of my life. And so now we see this coming up in the coupleship, and it's like, I can't express anything to him without him getting defensive, putting it back on me, going stoic and shutting down, right? What is going on?
Yeah.
And there is some maturation work, some looking at his shame issues work, some communication skill sets. This is all part of his recovery to develop these things so that these reactive conversations don't keep being the norm.
Yes. In other words, partners, what you're dealing with, frankly, is a whole host of issues that are on his end that are largely out of your control.
That's right. That's right.
Right.
No matter how delicately you pose it, no matter how nice you are when you say it,
it's not going to matter.
You're finding that he still reacts negatively.
This is representative of the work that he needs to be doing individually. For any partner who's struggling with, and we see a couple in the chat talking about this, for any partner who's struggling with this, we would lovingly invite you to lovingly but firmly redirect your partners to, this is what I would like you to be focusing on therapy, if at all possible. is
Yes.
developing out things like shame resilience, developing out things like conflict of or conflict resolution, right? Developing out
even what empathy is and what it means and how to show
yes,
empathy.
absolutely. Just the basic skill set of being able to recognize that another person's opinion doesn't dictate reality.
Mm.
Right? It sounds so simple to some of you. We know, being candid with you, that's one that I still find myself working on occasion.
Yeah.
Right? We now the good news is that these things we men can totally catch, or addicts, I should say, can totally catch up in these areas. This is not like some sort of lifelong deficit.
Absolutely. No question.
But it does take a lot of work. And it does mean that he does need to do that hard work on his own to face his own demons, to learn how to sit in his own pain, to sit in his own stuff, and to be able to hold himself healthily accountable. Because that's what's going on. I can tell you as a guy who used to do this, that's exactly he's not seeing himself through an accurate lens. And so what he's doing is the ultimate expression of Brene Brown's quote when she said, the degree to which we are offended versus infuriated by somebody and what they say to us is the degree to which we believe what they're saying. I would fly into a rage or completely shut down or become uber defensive or turn it back on my wife or whatever the case is, because when Brittany would say those kinds of things, how would it ping with me? It wasn't the message she was sending, which is I love you, but these things are a concern for me, but I care about you and there's hope. What did I hear? Ba 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 ba, you suck. Ba 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 ba, you're a terrible husband. Ba 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 ba, Bill down the road would be a way better partner. Right, whatever the case is, because he has not done the work to be able to internalize things in the correct way.
Yeah. And you have the right as partners to start to begin to establish some boundaries around this kind of communication, where you can let him know that if as this continues to happen in the future, you will lovingly say that you need to take a break from the communication so that he can go and work those things out and come back in a healthier space.
Absolutely.
You do not have to sit there and continue to engage in that kind of a communication. That's where boundaries come in.
Well, I think one thing that I could give each of you partners, because I just had this conversation with a partner the other day, I can almost hear some of you partners saying, so what do I actually do though, Steve? I would say start with this. Lovingly put it back on him. Express your need vulnerably, and then ask him. So here's the deal, partner that I love but is struggling to hear anything that I say. I care about you. And part of being close to you means, and loving you means being honest with you. I have feelings and needs that I need to be able to share. But when I share them, these are the responses that happen, and it derails us being able to communicate. So my need is for you to be able to hear these things. How can that be done in a way better where my need is met, but it's done in a way that works for you? Do you see how we do that? We put the responsibility back on him to figure that out. Right. And now to be fair, in some cases, there may be some easier or better ways to do it. And it does. And I should say that it does befall you as partners to make sure that you are practicing healthy communication skills yourself. Right. Which means communicating needs in a vulnerable, non-reactive way. Right. If you are leading out with your anger in a toxic fashion, that's going to shut anybody down, addict or otherwise. But as long as you're doing your part to be vulnerable on your end, right? The healthy thing is to be able to say is, look, here's my boundary, here's my need. We're not going to be able to progress until we move past this. So what needs to happen on your end, unless there's anything you can think of on my end that will help this conversation go better. But I can tell you what it doesn't involve is me capitulating and not sharing hard things with you.
Right.
So let's where do we need to go?
Yeah, I like that.
Okay, so let's take a look here. We've got another one here to bring up on the screen. This one's a little bit longer. My partner and I have been together for a little over 2 years. I found out through many discoveries over the last year about his decade-long addiction and the depth of it. Porn, dating sites, and online sexual affairs were almost a daily ritual, all kept under wraps by any means necessary. I thought our relationship was an honest one, and I gave him my whole heart and body. Every relationship I've been in has been abusive in some way, and I thought this one was different. I thought he was different. We had an active sex life at the beginning of the relationship. In 2 years, I probably turned him down twice, but as time went in, or on, I think is what she means, he wanted sex less and less. When I found out about his addiction, I thought, quote unquote, that explains it, and that when he started really working on it, it would improve. However, the opposite seems to be true. The more he works on establishing intimacy in other ways, the less he wants actual sex, and I am left still feeling completely undesirable. The stress over the past year caused me to gain a considerable amount of weight, and I can't help but think he's just no longer attracting me at all. Is it possible I was just a part of his addiction, and how is he recovering from that? From that, he is losing all covering from him losing all sexual attraction to me is what she's trying to say, right?
Yeah.
So before we answer this, what I should probably do is read the next question that came in, and if I didn't know better, I would say it was the addict partner that wrote this. I haven't put it into the chat, but I'll just read it here. How do I communicate? Actually, did I put it in the chat? I think I may have. Nope, not yet. Okay. Oh, yeah, I did. I lied. How do I communicate it to my partner that sex isn't the only way to have intimacy and show her that I am attracted to her? How can I also explain better that work tires me and lowers my drive to make love? I want her to understand, but also be empathetic myself. So yeah, they did, by the way, were submitted one right after the other. So I almost wonder maybe they did.
Might be. Yeah.
So which one do you want to tackle first, Mark?
Well, let's first of all say how complicated this can be. As individuals get older, their biology, their urges, their whatever changes. There are guys who can develop health problems. In fact, one of the first things we say to partners who submit this is, has he been in for testing of his testosterone levels, testing with regard to prostate issues, right? So you want to look at the lowest hanging fruit first. What could be the possible health issues that might be impacting this? But the other side of it is, couple things can, and I know this is so hard for partners because here's what happens. His sex drive, was always really strong. Now all of a sudden it's not there. And what did I discover in the history of how this has worked? When he's been off with pornography or masturbation or other sexual outlets, he hasn't been there for me. So if he's not desiring sex and that's not happening, he must be doing that someplace else. That is a very legitimate worry and concern on the part of a partner.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Sometimes what I see with guys is when they finally, for the first time in their lives, start to discover that there are other ways of expressing intimacy. We call it the 8 areas of intimacy, and 7 of those areas have nothing to do with sexual intimacy. And I've worked with guys where they start to explore the other 7, and what has been the sole focus of so-called intimacy for them, which has been sex all the years or decades, now they're focusing on the other 7. Sex can become less of a priority, less of an obsession or a focus. And that can be very unnerving for a partner. Wow, it used to be the be-all, end-all. Now he's focusing on all these other areas. What's happening? What's going on here? So there are a lot of options with this is a very complex issue that we can't put a simple answer to because there's so many things that could be going on. What we can recommend to all of you is that if there's any degree of sufficient safety to do so, to open up the dialogue about this issue. It's crazy how as partners we have sexual intimacy with each other, but it's one of the things that we feel the most awkward and embarrassed about talking about, especially for us as guys. And so I would ask this couple, what does the dialogue look like during a non-sexual time? Are you talking about this aspect of your relationship, right? Openly, vulnerably, non-reactively? What does the dialogue look like about how you're addressing this? And I'll bet that it's probably not being talked about in non-sexual times in just a comfortable, natural dialogue to talk about, here's what I see and am feeling with regard to this. Well, here's how this is for me on my side. Is the sexual dialogue open? And if it isn't healthy to do it eyeball to eyeball, then write down your feelings in journaling and then send it to your partner in an email if you can't talk about it. So I always say, let's open up the healthy sexual dialogue because I'll bet it's not happening.
It's a great point, and it probably is kind of the big master solution. I mean, some other factors just to keep in mind that just to kind of wet your whistle with this, because I know this is a common issue. I'll just be really candid and open. We do this in Dare to Connect. So if you like what happens next and this isn't too much for you, then you'll love Dare to Connect. We'd love to have you come join us. But so my addiction happened at a time frame. Both my addiction as well as my recovery happened at a time frame that probably is common for many of you guys. I got into this in my early teens. It was present all the way up until fairly not too long before my to getting married. I was honest with my wife about it, but neither one of us knew what we were dealing with. It wasn't an issue for the first year because, frankly, I think there was the novelty of sex in our relationship. And then about a year and a half in, it started to kind of creep back in. I was then in addiction actively, off and on, although I was trying to work on things to one degree or another, but I was definitely half-assing it for the better part of 12 years or so. And when I finally started to get serious about recovery, when we first had gotten married, I was 22. When I first started getting into recovery, you can see where this is maybe going, I was 35. So a lot of things happened between those two differences. And my partner, like many of you, struggled in some ways with this because she said, well, Steve, you used to be this way before, and now you're not. Because it was true. After we got into serious recovery, I was less sexual in a lot of respects. And we went through a process and discovered a number of things. The first is what Mark already indicated. My testosterone levels were shockingly low. And that was something that needed to be addressed all on its own because chemically there was an issue. But then even more than that, what I came to find out was that for me, as I started to connect more emotionally, it wasn't that I was less interested in sex. I was less obsessed with sex.
Mm-hmm.
Back in the old days, I used to look to sex, and that you will find most addicts really resonate with what I'm going to say next. One of the things that pornography and other related sexual compulsions teaches is that sex is the indicator of all things in a marriage or relationship, and also that the quality of sex is the way that in which you measure the connection. And so for me, the way to connect with Brittany, more than I realized getting married, it was sex. Now, it doesn't mean that I didn't love her or care about her, but there was this huge emphasis on the sexual component, right? And when I started to learn healthy ways of living, it wasn't that I still wanted to spend more time with Brittany, but because I was actually connecting with her on an emotional level and not trying to fill all of my 15 emotional buckets with just some giant barrel full of sex bourbon, right? When I started to actually do that in a healthy way, that compulsion for sex started to go way down because we were actually experiencing sustainable, balanced connection. So that was a factor. Another factor probably has to do with age. It's no secret that the libido between a 22-year-old and a 35-year-old is going to be vastly different. That's just the reality. But for Brittany, you got to think about, and I know many partners will relate to this. I know for a partner that can be a struggle because your brain is referencing, well, here's when things started and here's now that he's getting healthy. Why such the change? And obviously there could be other nefarious reasons, but hopefully this just gives you an idea of some of the things that could be at play. But we know it's terribly confusing. And like Mark said, his answer is still the best one. Really what needs to happen is that dialogue needs to start along with, and we would tell anyone in our clinics to do this, go do the medical stuff first. Rule that crap out. It's so sad when addicts and partners in a marriage are trying to work all out these complex problems, and then we come to find out that a simple testosterone shot would, greatly alleviate some of these things.
Yeah.
So,
yeah.
Anyway.
Well,
Okay.
we are, man, we're 7:30 our time.
We are.
Yeah.
We've been here over an hour, even despite all of the tech issues. We again, guys, apologize so much for the issues we had. Tomorrow will be much smoother. Again, please click on the link that your Reddit forum moderators have been kind enough to provide, and we will definitely make sure to get that taken care of. And if we can't get the YouTube working, I will have a backup Zoom all ready to go, a webinar prepared and set up. So I'll shoot the link to you in the chat. We'll start within 2 minutes of the start time. God is my witness, and we will not do this again. So if I have to crawl into Google's servers myself and make it work, we will do it. So we really apologize and appreciate all of you being here. Feel free to send questions to your moderators in whatever form is most appropriate. Actually, I would take that back. Feel free to add questions to the Google form that was sent out to you all earlier. You're welcome to continue to add to that if you'd like.
We still have a bunch we didn't get to, so
we
will cover those tomorrow in the morning.
Yes.
In our 10 a.m. Mountain Time session.
But please do
Also,
add on. Yeah.
CCB, the moderator, brought up we are offering a discount
Yes.
for any of you who are interested to come and join us over at Dare to Connect, where 6 times a week we come together for addicts, partners, and couples, all different sessions, and get into all of this in enormous depth. If you want to come over and try that, come over and try the 2-week free trial. And also, if you decide to come in, you can do so at a discount for the. In fact, Steve, why don't you talk about that discount real quick?
So it's the heaviest discount that we give ever. We really appreciate the partnership we've enjoyed with Reddit. We don't do this, but with one other forum out there, and we've only done it one other time. We're pretty selective with how we do this, but we just love what is done over there and the integrity of all you ladies and what's happening. So, yeah. So as many of you are familiar, if you've ever listened to the podcast, anybody who signs up for the program for the first time gets a 2-week trial just to try it out. Okay, and that's the case for anybody, anywhere, anytime. If you sign up beginning today through September 15th, using the code that is going to be put in the chat if it hasn't been already, when you sign up at daretoconnectnow.com, it will give you $150 off, which is over half off of your first month in addition to that. So essentially, you'll be getting the program for 6 weeks for $145 for you as well as your partner. That's over 30 hours of content a month in addition to all of the Dare to Connect standard videos that have been saved, the Advanced D2C Academy program that we have and are expanding, live interaction with us in each of those sessions, support groups on the weekend, the whole 9 yards. So, about the easiest we can make for you and your partner to really deep dive into this for a good 6 weeks and see if it's right for you. If you like what you've heard here, as we say often, you will love Dare to Connect because we just take it even deeper than this. We can do things in a forum like that where we meet recurrently with you that you just can't do any other way. Yeah. And so we would love to have you join us over there. So check out that coupon code. Feel free to throw that in again at daretoconnectnow.com. You'll just go ahead and input that there when you sign up, and we'll take it from there. So.
Yeah. So we'll, if some of you want to come in and join us tomorrow, please do. We will be covering the other questions that came in that we didn't have time to get to.
Yep.
And we'll look forward to that tomorrow.
By the way, our wives also make occasional appearances on the program. Brittany actually showed up in a recorded fashion today while we were doing a kind of a unique vignette on trigger processing. Brittany and I had some crazy stuff come up this week with one of our pet animals. And so we broke down a situation that historically would have probably resulted in divorce papers being filed and actually resulted in a lot of connection happening as a result. So great stuff. And again, all of our content is recorded and available for at least 2 weeks, if not for longer. So if you've missed live sessions, we've got a month of content uploaded right now on the server that you can take advantage of as we navigate currently the topic of triggers, and then we'll be jumping into new stuff here in the coming week or two.
Yeah. All right, everybody. Hey, thanks for being with us, and thanks for your patience with our tech issues.
For sure. We really appreciate all of you. Again, thank you so much, and thank you for hanging in here with not just the tech issues, but with your partners. We love you. We really care about you. We know all of you are showing up as avatars in the chat, but that link again for YouTube tomorrow morning at 10 a.m. Mountain is valid. And if it doesn't work by 10:05 at the latest, you will see in the chat a link to a Zoom video. We will get started on time. We will make it killer. It will be awesome.
All right, everybody.
Okay. Have a great night, everybody. We'll see you then.
Yeah.